Hey there! Are the front axle seals on your Ford Stupid Duty shot? Well, today I'm going to show you the California Hillbilly method for changing them out on today's episode of I Hate Working on Cars! The first thing we want to do is find some safe way to chock the tires.
No. No. The one I'm pointing to. No. No!
This?
Yes.
There we go. This tiny wooden block should work. Thanks, Ray. Next thing we need is to jack up the truck, put down some jack stands, and yeet the front tires. A quick note, this particular B-roll video was shot for a suspension project. For doing the axle seals, you'll see later I put the jack stands under the axles, and you can just jack up the truck at the front axle to save yourself a bit of headache. Now, I'm going to remove the calipers. On the passenger side, the brake line was actually in the way of accessing the 21mm caliper bracket bolt, so I had to loosen up the 17mm caliper bolt to loosen the caliper from the bracket so I could access the 21mm bolt to remove the entire assembly. Also, I have just enough of a lip on the edge of the brake rotor that I had to actually compress and wedge the calipers off the rotors. Once off, I secure them with hooks and or wire to keep them from dangling from the brake line. With a T27, you can now remove the locking hub assembly, but as you'll see later, this step you can skip altogether, so unless you want to grease it and install new gaskets, just leave it on. If you do remove them, remember to torque the bolts down to 53 inch-pounds when you throw it back together. Now I'll remove the brake rotor. My passenger side rotor wanted to get in a real throwdown, but with a liquid wrench and some gentle kicking with a dent puller, I finally freed the stubborn piece of shit. The driver's side, conversely, just came right off. With the 5mm hex key, and being very gentle with the pliers or small pry tools, I'll get the wheel speed sensor out and tuck it behind the dust shield. A 21mm socket and a long breaker bar or wrench will break loose the 4 hub nuts located on the back side of the knuckle. Once I had them loose, I transitioned to an air ratchet to finish getting them off. You like getting off, don't you? Now, a couple tricks here. You notice I didn't pull the axle shafts out of the hub. I didn't remove the large C-clip inside the hub that holds it in. Hell, in this shot, the hub lock is still installed. Nope, I didn't do any of that shit. I just grabbed a little pry bar to bust the rust loose where the hub meets the knuckle, then grabbed a long ass pry bar and pried on the axle shafts until the entire thing came out as an assembly. Once out, I cleaned up the shaft with some triple aught steel wool. It's all rusty from years of that axle seal being worn out, and I greased up my U-joint. Since the old seals were completely shot, they just fell out, so basically they removed themselves. So we're moving on to installation of the new upgraded steel Timken axle shaft seals. There are tools you can use to install these, but I don't have any of those, so I'm just going to tap it gently by working around, hammer it in with a pry bar. Very gently, a little at a time. I don't want to bust it up and get it out around. Take your time if you do it this way. Let's throw the whole thing back together. Don't forget the dust shield, but grab the whole assembly and yeet that f***er back in place. I put a little lube on the new axle seal first and carefully put my big shaft through that tight hole. You know what I'm talking about. Before I go too far on the reassembly, I'm going to lock and unlock the hub to make sure the splines are properly engaged and the hub is locking with the axle shaft properly. When the hub is locked, it should spin the axle shaft both ways. When the hub is in auto, it should engage if you twist the axle shaft forward, simulating power being applied to four-wheel drive. It should disengage with the axle shaft when you spin the hub backwards as if you're driving in reverse. Next, reinstall the 4 21mm hub bolts and torque them down to 133 foot-pounds. Now, fish the wheel speed sensor back through the dust shield and tighten that back down with the 5mm hex key. Torque it down to 159 inch-pounds. Toss the rotor back on. Clean up the caliper bolts with a wire wheel or a steel brush. Put the caliper in position. Apply some blue Loctite to the 21mm caliper anchor plate bolts and install them. torque them down to 166 foot-pounds on an F250 or F350. If you got a 450 or 550, they go to 295 foot-pounds. If you need to remove the 17mm brake caliper bolts, on F250s and 350s, torque those down to 56 pounds. On larger 450s and 550s, they actually get torqued down to a lower number, 46 foot-pounds. While you're torquing that down, it's time for a word from our sponsor, Rotor Rooster Plumbing. If you're leaking fluid out of your dirty brown hole, call Rotor Rooster. Take the plunge. Hey, give yourself a thumbs up because you're done. Just toss those wheels back on and torque them down to 165 foot-pounds, and if you found this video helpful, hit the like button. And if you want to see more videos, like me yanking the engine out of this thing because she decided to spontaneously opt for the piston delete feature, hit the subscribe button. Hell, hit the bell icon while you're at it so Google will know you like watching videos of a guy working on trucks in his PJs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.